I basically don't believe in delegation.
Figure out how to design new things.
But most importantly, do something you like, whether it's
all the investment decisions they got to make in their entire life.
Here are the list of some of the things that I wish I had known earlier. And right now, I'm bringing it to you. These are curated lists of people who have made mistakes and successes in business, so pay rapt attention to them. Okay? Like and subscribe.
It depends so much on what the general market is doing and what interest rates are doing and what psychology is doing. We will make our best deals when people are the most pessimistic. You know, that's been true ever since I was 1930. I was born in 1930. When I was born, things got much more attractive over the next 2 years, and apparently I didn't do anything about it there. But, you know, that was the opportunity of a lifetime, and I blew it by, you know, worrying about the kid in the next crib or something. But over my lifetime, you know, I've had fabulous opportunities sometimes, and they happen because humans are human, and I don't. You know, I'm fearful of all kinds of things. I don't want to try and, you know, be one of the Walendas and walk on a tiny strip between a couple of twin towers or something, or whatever it may be. But I don't get fearful by things that other people are afraid of in a financial way. That you know, the idea that if let's say Berkshire went down 50% next week, I would regard that as a fantastic opportunity, and it wouldn't bother me in the least. And most people aren't. They just react differently, and so it's not that I don't have emotions, but I don't have emotions about the prices of stocks. I mean, those decisions get all the way to my brain, whereas emotions can get bogged down some other place. So, Berkshire will increase its earning power over time as we retain money. I mean, we are doing things, making decisions every day. People are working, we're retaining earnings. We will build the earning power, but it won't be coming in any even stream, and it certainly won't be matched dollar for dollar on either the upside or the downside in market prices. But that's what makes it a good business. And, you know, the investment business is that everything isn't properly appraised, and the sillier other people get, the better your opportunities get.
I've told students, if when they got out of school, they got a punch card with 20 punches on it, and that's all the investment decisions they got to make in their entire life, they would get very rich because they would think very hard about each one. And you don't need 20 right decisions to get very rich. You know, 4 or 5 will probably do it over time. So I don't worry too much about the things I don't understand. If you understand some of these businesses that are coming along and can spot things on, if you can spot on Amazon, for example, I mean, it's a tremendous accomplishment what Jeff Bezos has done. And I tip my hat to him. He's a wonderful businessman. He's a good guy, too. But could I have anticipated that he would be the success and 10 others wouldn't be? I'm not good enough to do that. But fortunately, I don't have to. You know, I don't have to form an opinion on Amazon. And I did form an opinion on the Bank of America, and I formed an opinion on Coca-Cola. I mean, Coca-Cola's been around since 1886. There's 1.8 billion 8-ounce servings of Coca-Cola products sold every day. Now, if you take 1 penny and get 1 penny extra, that's $18 million a day. And 18 million times 365 is 7 billion, 3 less 730 billion, or $6,570,000,000. So annually, $6,570,000,000 from 1 penny. Do you think Coca-Cola is worth a penny more than, you know, Joe's Cola? I think so. So, you know, and I've got about 127 years of history that would indicate it. So those are the kind of decisions I like to make. And you may have an entirely different field of expertise than I would have. and probably much more up to date in terms of the kind of businesses that we're seeing evolve. And you can get very rich if you just understand a few of them and understand their future. But fortunately, I don't have to.
I think the first thing is start small. Don't invest a lot of money very quickly, and don't invest in using money that you will need in the next 6 months or so, or even longer. So only use money that you don't really need in a hurry. And second advice would be don't follow advices on Twitter. Everyone's financial situation is different. Number 3 is only invest in a small number of projects that you know well, that you have time to follow in a lot of depth. So instead of investing in 50 or 100 coins, just invest in 2 to 3 coins that you know well. This way, whenever there's a piece of news, you know what the impacts are.
The greatest people are self-managing. They don't need to be managed. Once they know what to do, they'll go figure out how to do it, and they don't need to be managed at all. What they need is a common vision, and that's what leadership is. What leadership is having a vision, being able to articulate that so the people around you can understand it, and getting a consensus on a common vision. We wanted people that were insanely great at what they did, but we're not necessarily those seasoned professionals, but who had at the tips of their fingers and in their passion the latest understanding of where technology was and what we could do with that technology, and who wanted to bring that to lots of people. So the neatest thing that happens is when you get a core group of 10 great people, it becomes self-policing as to who they let into that group. So I consider the most important job of someone like myself is recruiting.
When I was a young kid, there was a widowed man that lived up the street. And he's a little scary looking. And I got to know him a little bit. And one day he said, come on into my garage, I want to show you some liquid and a little bit of grit powder. And we closed the can up, and he turned this motor on. He said, come back tomorrow. And I came back the next day, we opened the can, and we took out these amazingly beautiful polished rocks. Stone.
As a college student, my roommates and I were always trying to think about how to make extra money. And one of the upperclassmen, I remember he told me, I'm tutoring this high school kid and they're paying me $60 an hour. I was like, wow, $60 an hour. It was like 3 or 4x what you could make at these other on-campus jobs. So I decided to try doing it myself. I started tutoring high school kids just in like math and science and things like that. And it paid really well. And so my roommate and I at the time, we were starting to just brainstorm, like, why don't we start a little tutoring company and help high school kids and their parents match with basically university students at the university where I was going to school. And so we got that going. We got maybe 10, 20 of our fellow students kind of connected in. And then we said, all right, let's make a website for this to connect even more people, maybe to try to expand it to other schools. We didn't really know this at the time, but we were kind of making an online marketplace like Airbnb but for tutoring. We were trying to take like a 10% fee by matching these people, and we were basically trying to do all the payments through our website. And what would happen often is they would meet the tutor and they'd do initially the first payment, but then afterwards they'd start paying them under the table. And so I realized at a certain point we were basically just getting in the way. They wanted us to just match them, but they didn't want us to be the whole billing apparatus. It was a much more of like a local repeat business, in-person business. And so for years and years, I struggled with that. So I eventually realized this thing isn't working. I need to go get a quote unquote real job. I was about to shut down the tutoring site, and I was like feeling a lot of pain about that because like, well, I don't know, there are still like 5,000-10,000 people every month who are kind of looking at this thing and using it. So I was like, what if I were just to put everything on autopilot? We're not going to be involved in any of the payments. There's no customer support. This is literally just going to be a directory, like a tutoring directory, and you can contact these tutors. You can pay them however you want. And I'm just going to try to make it like a free thing. Maybe I'll put up some ads. And so I basically had like a week before I was starting my new job. I got rid of all the payments. I messaged all the people using it. I was like, you can pay now people directly. And I did one more thing at the last hour, which was I said, if you want to have like a featured profile as a tutor with like a little featured badge and come up first in search results, then you can just pay $10 a month. And that was it. And I basically stopped looking at the website and I went to go focus on my new job. And every year thereafter, the site doubled after I made that change. And so basically, I guess the lesson was stop trying to extract value and start trying to create more value. Later, somebody ended up acquiring it for maybe like $2 million or something. It was like a 7 or 8 year base hit outcome where for years, 5-6 years, I was struggling to get anything to work.
I basically don't believe in delegation.
I think that there's sort of this theory that a lot of people have, which is like, all right, the job of a leader is like you hire people and you delegate things to them. My theory is there's so much going on across the company that I can't possibly get involved in all of it. So all these people are going to have like a ton of stuff that they're going to do. But fundamentally, if there is a decision that I want to be involved with, I'm going to be involved in it. I don't believe in delegating. Like it's like I think that that's generally a good way for founders to operate. I think it's like if you're running the company and you're on the hook for everything and there's like something that's important at whatever level of detail in the organization, I don't get like the logic of saying like I'm not going to be involved in that. Now, I mean you want to have humility and know that like if you're diving into some decision, you may not have the most context immediately, but I generally think that you want to be able to just have the cultural expectation that things are not going to be so hierarchical and like you're just going to dive into whatever you want. I try to generally keep a bunch of time open so that way like stuff is pretty dynamic and like you wake up in the morning and you're like, okay, I need to work on these 3 things today and I want to make sure that I have a block of time where I can go do that. I get really frustrated and bad mood if like my whole day is scheduled and there's like a thing that I know is really important and I like don't get time to do it because I'm sitting in other things that are not the most important thing to be doing. It's like you have too many days like that in a row and I just like explode.
So you start out as a 19-year-old, right? And you have this website that's just like going through the roof. Ron was talking earlier about how very early on the graphs just were going up very steeply. And you had to learn how to create this organization. You had to learn how to be a manager. That's the next phase after you raise money and you have something that's growing. How did you learn how to manage people?
Well, through a lot of mistakes. I mean, I don't think anyone is like naturally good at hiring out of the box, right? It's you have to learn. In each role, we probably went through multiple iterations before landing on a balance of a person that made sense. And the problem is made even harder by the fact that you don't need the same thing at each stage, right? So it's a moving target as well. But eventually,
it's not just hiring, though. You have to somehow lead a group of people and get them all to work together, right?
Yeah.
It's very hard.
Yeah,
that's what you do now, right? You don't program much, probably, right? You spend all your time managing people.
Yeah, well, only for fun.
Now you're a management expert.
No, absolutely not.
You must be, right?
Try telling that to my team.
But how did you learn it? Was there anyone who taught you or any books?
Well, you just have to throw yourself in, right? So you have to not
really
be that
just
afraid
trial
to make
and error.
mistakes. So I have, I've developed a few heuristics over time that I think are simple enough that the organization can internalize. So in terms of hiring, everyone says hire good people, right? No one wants to hire like a reasonable person. You want to hire like a really good person. But then the question is, how do you, what's the right heuristic for determining if someone's really good? So over time, what I figured out was that the only actual way to let someone analyze whether someone was really good was if they would work for that person. So I don't think that needs to recurse too many levels down in the organization, but I basically think that that's a really good heuristic, right? And I believe that. I mean, if you look at my management team today, I mean, if we were in an alternate universe and I hadn't started the company, it would be an honor to work for any of these people. And I think if you build a company that has kind of those values, rather than just saying, oh, I want to hire, the best person I can find or whatever, if you hold yourself to that standard, then I think you'll build a pretty strong company. There are other things around management that you just kind of have to throw yourself into in different ways as well. I used to be really terrified of public speaking, to the point where when I did all hands, which at the time were like 10 or 15 people, I had to sit down because I was so afraid. And at the time, a lot of people, which is ironic because I'm still sitting, but not because I'm afraid, just because it's more comfortable. And so what I did was I basically threw myself into some of this stuff, and a bunch of schools invited me to come speak, and what I did was I accepted some of those invitations, even though I had no real goal of doing that except for desensitizing myself, and I went up to give a speech without having prepared anything. And if you do that a few times, you stop being afraid really quickly. And because, what's the worst thing that can happen, I think a survey says that more Americans are afraid of public speaking than death. And just throw yourself in. You get over this stuff.
I remember the first talk you ever gave at startup school, and I think it was one of these, the way you described, that you went with no preparation, right? And
actually,
I can tell you
but thank you.
What's the worst thing that can happen? You can say something off the cuff that gets taken by the press like a football and thrown around and gets you in.
That's
fine.
I actually did prepare for that one. I don't have that excuse, but the fact that
it was really good.
All that this practice did was desensitize me. It didn't actually make me good at public speaking, as this is proof of.
If you study engineering and you figure out how to design new things, then it's relatively easy to start a company. You just need to get a few like-minded people with you, and then focus on creating a prototype, a compelling prototype as soon as possible. And then there's a strong venture capital industry in this country that will give you funding to take things to the next level, and that's all there is to it. And you might, if you try it a few times, you may or may not succeed. But I think sometimes people fear starting a company too much. You have to say, really, what's the worst that could go wrong? You're not going to starve to death. You're not going to die of exposure. What's the worst that could go wrong?
My recommendation would really be spend less time on finance, spend less time in conference rooms, less time on PowerPoint, and more time just trying to make your product as amazing as possible.
I mean, maybe there are occasionally companies that get created where there's not an extended period of extreme pain, but I'm not aware of very many of such instances. But I do think that new great entrepreneurs are born every day, and we'll continue to see amazing companies get built. So but I would definitely advise people who are starting a company to expect a long period of quite high difficulty. But I mean, as long as people stay super focused on creating the absolute best product or service that really delights their end customer, if they stay focused on that, basically, if you get it such that your customers want you to succeed, then you probably will.
All right, you have to focus on the customer and delivering for them.
Make sure if your customers love you, your odds of success are dramatically higher.
People tell you it's not possible, that it can't be done, the more you should be absolutely determined to prove them wrong. Treat the word impossible as nothing more than motivation. Relish the opportunity to be an outsider. Embrace that label.
I don't know if y'all know it, but we're gonna win. I don't know if you feel it, but we're gonna win. I don't know if you can see it, but we're gonna win. You got to understand, we're gonna win right now, not later. Right now.